Hey everyone, welcome back to another YouTube Live. Obviously, super excited to be back, especially after last week. We were off last week. I'll give you a quick recap. Last week, I had an awesome opportunity to go to a YouTube conference up in LA, and I'm down in San Diego. So nice short trip for me, and just tons of great learnings that are gonna hopefully really drive some better content, more strategic content to the platform. And so, one of the things that I'm going to start to build on, and we're not going to be too focused in on it today, but we want to get a little bit more focus in these live sessions just to provide a little bit more learnings, a little bit more structure. So in future sessions, I'm going to come in with maybe a little bit more learnings to start and not overwhelm the session with learnings, because obviously it's really critical that when you come in, especially for everybody who's coming in on time, that we are getting to your questions, because that is the main point of these live conversations, is to get a chance to interact and hopefully get some good data, good advice. One of the other items that I want to mention moving forward really quickly, just as a business item, and I'll probably mention this a couple times throughout the live stream, but in order to deliver better content for the community, I've decided to take a little bit of a step back from the weekly production of YouTube videos. So videos are going to now be coming out every other week, but the goal is still to go live every week so that we can really have this good interaction, these good conversations. And obviously, if that cadence changes at any point, or if I'll ever be off for any given week on these lives, or taking a week off of a video, I'll always update that in the community portion of YouTube beforehand, just so everybody knows. Okay, let's just take a moment to recap yesterday's video. It was shocking, and now we can have a little bit more of a candid conversation with everybody who's live here. But basically, when I was doing that hiring committee video yesterday, if you haven't seen it, we get a ton of questions about hiring committee. It's probably the most robust piece of content on hiring committee out there. That there's a ton of bad data there. So even Candor, which is like a huge platform, was still talking in an article last year about scoring in Google interviews. That hasn't happened in about 5 years. They don't have a scoring convention. It's more of like the lean hire, hire, strong no hire. So just as you're looking through information online, be discerning, because there's a lot of bad information out there. And just want to always be recognizing that there's a bunch of sources of truth, and just be seeking out as many as you can. Okay, without further ado, we're going to dive in. Lastly, if this is your first time here, if you've never seen us before, my name is Jeff H. Sipe. I'm the founder and interview and negotiation coach at practiceinterviews.com. And if you like what we're doing today, if you've never subscribed to our channel, again, we produce what we think is pretty good content. We'll continue to make it better over time. And if you are liking what we're saying, please smash that like button. And again, we always think smash is kind of a funny word, but if you like what we're doing, please hit that like button. Okay, we're going to dive in, and thank you all for being here. Remember, it's not just questions, it's comments, it's positivity. And I think what you've seen is we have a super, super positive platform. So let's keep it that way. And I sincerely appreciate that. All right, John. So you are negotiating a salary for an internal promo, and the offer is $8K less than the requested number. Which response would be considered more aggressive? So, okay, this is a really fun topic to talk about, promo increases, because it's not talked about often enough, and it's a really challenging conversation. So it looks like you stopped typing. So John, I know you show up here quite often, so please come back and we'll ideate through that, because it's going to be a great conversation for the audience. Thank you. Okay, you have an interview tomorrow, okay, for an APMM role. That's an associate product marketing manager role. Okay, you're gonna have a lot of questions throughout the stream. Okay, good. 3 tips. So any product marketing manager role, especially when we talk about the associate level means that interviews tend to lean behavioral. When we get more down to the associate level, there's a little bit less challenging on the open-ended questions. So one, it's going to be more behavioral. Secondarily, product marketing, right? You really have to get into that product marketing space. And so one of the biggest pieces is understanding design, analytical, strategic, technical, estimation. Like those are all possible. Again, it will lean behavioral. So that's the second piece. And then in these types of roles, how do you work and collaborate with others? That's going to be a critical third item. Preparing for your first Google interview in a few days. Is it all right to still apply for other related roles? And how is internal mobility between GCP, YouTube, Google Ads? And like, okay, so yeah, you can, but why? Why are you applying for other roles if you're already interviewing for one? You should be working with your recruiter on that. You shouldn't be applying. You should say, hey, recruiter Jane, I'm really excited about interviewing for this role, but I saw another couple roles or this other role that I thought was a really cool fit. While I'm in this interview process, can we maybe dual track? Ask them about dual tracking. What does that mean? Dual tracking means that Googleyness and leadership, GCA, sometimes those can be used to determine whether you're a fit across multiple roles. So talk to them about dual tracking, but you should really be working with your recruiter and not hiding that you're applying for other roles. Not that you're doing that, but just be forthcoming. It will benefit you in the long run. Oh, and secondly, internal mobility. So internal mobility is great. Just focus on the role or roles that you're interviewing for. Like so many people get fixated on internal mobility, and I just don't want that to show up anywhere in the process that you're kind of singing towards that or moving towards that path. And usually on internal mobility, think 2 years in that first role. You really got to understand the foundation. So a couple of years, and then after that, you can switch every year if it makes sense. Okay, what does it mean if the steps have changed through the process? All right, so originally hiring manager, case study, and a panel of 3. After my first interview with the hiring manager, the case was canceled. And what kind of information should I be expecting to get from your recruiter? So this is a great question. Sometimes the process does change, and maybe they identified that you were a better fit for another role. Maybe at a higher level, it requires a case study, and they've decided that you're coming in a level lower. Your recruiter should be the source of truth, and you need to be asking them questions. And when you don't get the answers you want, you have to push back a little bit in a very kind way and say, look, I'm not really getting all the data I need, and I just want to find out a little bit more information, because what I hear from current Googlers, former Googlers, is that this information is being told to them. So we can always push back and just use the other people as our source, because if it's a good recruiter, they're going to tell you anything and everything. And I did that. For 5 years, I told my candidates every single piece of data that I could tell them without breaching confidentiality, without doing anything that wasn't, hurting my integrity or was not morally correct. Oh, awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for coming in. Obviously, we love these notes, and we will never get sick of this. And anybody who comes into these lives and gives us this positive feedback, it's just awesome. We are happy to be in a small part of the journey. We know the hard work it takes to get into these companies, especially Google. So thank you so much for showing up, and congrats. You're so nervous. Okay, you have a call today after Monday onsite. Is it too soon for a yes? No, absolutely not. So sometimes interview feedback comes in quicker. You could have experienced really quick feedback, and that could just be you had a few interviews and everybody was just on it. So no, but I do prefer that recruiters are proactively sharing positive feedback, saying, hey, like, I got great news, let's chat. And so when they don't do that, I just wish that they'd have better communication skills. Good luck, and let us know how it goes. Okay, thanks, Pedro. So a finalist in the process. So come back and let us know. It looks like you have a couple more comments here. So yeah, absolutely. Okay, so come back and ask us, let us know if you have any more questions. We're live. Okay, I hope for 10 minutes I've been talking at a live audience, so it's good to know we're live. Thanks, Eric, for being here. Okay, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, there's just so much confusion on hiring committee. And remember, with hiring committee, it's just like anything else. It's going to change. Like when I reached out to a former friend of mine who worked at Google, and he told me that in his group, it only took 2 people to make a decision in HC. So quorum was only 2 for his group. That was shocking because my entire time there, everything was at least 4. 4 people needed to make a decision. And then my other internal friend, she let me know that Eng is now a quorum of 3. So it's constantly changing. And we know a couple groups are no longer doing HC. I've been trying to find out who, haven't been able to, but it's just a couple niche down groups. Most groups are still doing HC. Okay, like this video before we deep dive into the QA. We're deep diving in. So if you like what we're doing, please hit that like button. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, now's a great time to do it. Thank you. What are the basics that we need to keep in mind to be sharp on an analytical lead role? Yeah, so if anybody's actually really poked into my LinkedIn profile, you could see that I was an analyst and analyst lead earlier in my career. And the number one thing as an analyst and analyst lead, as somebody who's been in that role, is really the stakeholders, the internal people, how you work with others, how you get data from others, how you systemize, get smarter, get better, because the only way I got better at that role was learning from my direct reports and them providing information and feedback and me rolling that up and really standing behind them, right? Being the lead for them, because we had a lot of challenges at that organization. So I would just say, don't forget the people component. Yeah, of course, it's about getting into the weeds of the data and information and systemizing and being good by using SQL and all these other things that we can do as analysts, but don't forget about the people side as well. If you're in the process of interviewing Google, but you want to apply to other open positions and other companies, well, I think we covered, Stacy, the question of how to apply to other roles, but applying to other companies, that's totally your prerogative. I want you to apply to other companies. And so, yeah, that's something you should be doing. And you should be getting pretty active all at one time. Like, why not get active at one time so that you're putting in all the hard work, not in different chunks during the year, but you're putting in all the hard work to get all your answers down and practice them at the same time. So it's something I recommend. Yes, they do hire candidates with gaps. Remember, this is a different world. There are all sorts of reasons for gaps. So as long as you have a good explanation for them and you talk about what you learned and what you did during those gaps to improve your skill set, that's what's most important. A couple weeks since the recruiter's feedback. Okay, and you got an email from another recruiter saying you'd be a good fit for the role. Okay, sorry, I scrolled way ahead here. Is this a good or bad sign? Does the second recruiter have access to your interview feedback? What can they see? Should I tell the first recruiter about this opportunity? Would that positively influence decision-making? Any tips? Okay, so yeah, this is considered bad form internally. No candidate should be reached out to by another recruiter when they're actively in process for another role. And yeah, they should be able to see that in the system, unless you have some sort of duplication in the system, like you have 2 records because you have 2 separate email addresses. So that sometimes happens, but no, these recruiters should absolutely be communicating with each other. And to the one who reached out to you, you should say, well, I'm actively in process for this role. CC your current recruiter in, and that's going to be the best step. So now everybody's in on the loop. Everybody's in on it together. That's the best piece of advice. But yeah, they should be communicating with each other. That's stepping on toes and not highly recommended. But again, sometimes there's other factors, like, again, you have a second record in the system just because of different email addresses, for example. Okay, Stephen, Google interview was on 9/13. Recruiter informed me last week she was waiting for more feedback to come in. 9/13, what is it? October 6th? Yeah, I mean, this happens, right? There are interviewers who just are terrible at getting feedback in, but at what point does this become a bad candidate experience? So we're at 17, 23 days. So we're at over 3 weeks. It's a long time. So I can't say whether it's good or bad. Some interviewers just take a long time. So just be patient and continue to check in. And I'm sorry that you're having that experience. The recruiter told you that you're in the pipeline for future positions. Is that true? Do I have to do all the interviews again? In the pipeline for future positions is relatively vague, right? I want a little bit more data there. But do you have to do all the interviews again? It depends. Depends on how you did the first time around. It depends on whether it's for a like role. Usually, if it's within a year and let's say you did the full slate of interviews and you crush the Googleyness and leadership interview and they re-interview you within 6 months, they shouldn't be redoing that interview. They should just do a GCA, an RRK, whatever the role requires. After a year, you'll have to redo everything. That's typically how it works. Should you invest in someone rewriting your resume? I don't like it when other people write your resume. You should write your resume. We have a resume template. Okay, yes, we get to go to our fun little tracker thing for the first time today. So in our courses, there's actually a little LinkedIn and resume thing. And in the resume thing, it's literally just a link to download our resume template. Most important item on a resume that almost no resume coaches do or speak about is the summary. The summary should be different for every single role. It should be catered to the role you're applying for, interviewing for. Remember, your audience does not have a lot of time to review your resume. A bulleted summary is the way to go. If they're not giving you that advice, they don't know the audience that's looking at your resume. They're making a decision in 3 seconds of whether they're going to look more. So bulleted summary, I'll always sing that. And I think I've used the sing word a couple of times today, so that's weird, but we'll keep it going. All right. What does it mean when a recruiter gives you a range for salary? Base starts at 100 to 108. Does that mean that it's not negotiable beyond 108? Kayla, not necessarily. And remember, with these base ranges, now it depends on the role. I don't know where you're interviewing for, but obviously at a company like a Google, yeah, they might tell you the base range, but so what? You're going to get a nice bonus. You're going to get some nice RSUs. They call them GSUs. So at these bigger companies, they don't need to tell you about everything. Usually, though, it's going to be pretty close to that band. So will you make 150, 140, 130? No. But could it push up to maybe 120? Sure, it's possible. Greetings from London. Okay, absolutely one of my just favorite cities in the world. How would you set up a supply chain for a Google data center? Okay, so one of the biggest pieces with this question is this has been done before. It's not setting up the supply chain for a Google data center for the first time ever. So you really want to prompt and focus in on that historical data in terms of how it's been done in the past. Who are the vendors that have been used in the past? Who are the critical stakeholders who you need to engage with, from the data center deployments team to the capacity planning team to the data center site selection team, depending on what phase you're in. So lots of teams to think about, lots of historical data. And then for me, the number one thing that I'm queuing in on any supply chain question is we have to ask the question of, are we talking about today? Is it October 6th? Because the reason there is that globally there are so many issues with the supply chain that it's something that we're really going to want to factor into our answer. And then, of course, this will be a little bit of operational and tech framework, from goals and objectives to timeline to budget to scalability to any sort of automation. So you'll flex a little bit between that more operational and technical framework. And then in the solution, just use your DC knowledge. Just get into the weeds, dive deep, think about maybe a specific part of the supply chain to focus in on first. I hope that helps. You have an SDE, L4, interview tomorrow. You're nervous about the Googleyness round. Can you give some tips that you can follow in the last minute? Absolutely. So your Googleyness and leadership interview, if it's most interviewers, you're going to have both sides of the coin. So negative and positive, unethical, conflict, some sort of major challenge. And then you're going to have the positive, like sometime that inclusivity was great, or sometime that you enhanced a process, mentored somebody. The biggest thing I see on these Googleyness and leadership questions, especially on the behavioral side, is if it was a conflict, for example, get to the conflict right away. The conflict with Bob was X. Here are the actions I took to solve that conflict. It's the background story that really is a killer in these Googleyness and leadership interviews. There's so much context, so much story. Get to answering the question. That's going to be critical. And then remember, conflicts are good because we need to have conflicts. If everything was perfect, and like, we need conflict in our life. So really thinking about the positive pitch, positive tone, those are going to be a couple of last minute items. Lastly, we did the unethical question. We did the inclusivity question, I think, in terms of like somebody's being left out. We did a couple videos, so watch those videos. You have a 45-minute phone screen later this month. If I do not pass or even make it to the onsite and then do not pass, how would you recommend to pass the next time? Okay, Michael, so I'm going to answer this question in a different way. We have to go in believing that we're going to get the job. If we're already advancing to that future state where we didn't get the job, you're not going to get it. And so I know that this breaks away a little bit from what people jump in here to hear, but if I'm putting on my coaching hat, I know so much of success in these interviews is self-belief. And without that self-belief, it's just not going to happen. So the better question you should be asking yourself is, how can you prepare and take control of the situation right now up into that phone screen to make sure that you do get it? Because preemptively getting in our minds that we might not make it will allow that doubt to creep in, and you have to go in super confident. And I know that that's very easy in theory, but that's what I did when I went into my Google interviews. And I had no reason to believe that my expertise or experience was better than anybody else's. I just prepared really hard, practiced really hard, and believed that I could, and that's why I got the job. So I know that that's not really answering your question, but we got to anticipate that we're going to get the job. Otherwise, we're not going to get it. Okay, RRK questions on consumer insights, research manager role, marketing. Okay, that's pretty specific. So, okay, so consumer insights and research manager. So RRK questions. One of the best places you can go, and I'll pin this video, but look at our breaking down the job description. And then also, if you go in here, we still have this free interview course. It's been up for almost a year. At probably about a year time point, we're going to need to take it down, revamp it, etc. But this will walk you through how to figure out what questions are going to be asked in the job description. So of course, you're going to get questions that are going to be based on understanding consumers. How do you understand the users? And you're going to get questions based on how you go about your overall research, right? Who do you partner with? But this is going to be the best exercise for you, is to go into that course, because that is really how you determine RRK questions, is going through the JD, especially for a role this specific. You'll get 60 to 70% of the questions if you go through that job description exercise. Thanks for all your videos. Absolutely. You've moved to the offer stage with YouTube. Amazing. Amazing. We're getting a lot bigger audience in India lately. Like, we've seen a huge spike over the last 6 months, and that's awesome for us because it's such a big audience. And so negotiate. That's all I can tell you. What we see in the India market is that the offers come in extremely low, and that just culturally, there's not as much negotiating going on. So just make sure you negotiate, because you can get more. We work with negotiation clients all the time in India, and they're always getting more. Good luck. Interview with Amazon and LinkedIn next week for TPM roles. The market's really hot. Yes, it is. You'll continue to apply your interview tips. Yeah, so Stephen, Stephen, send me a quick email. I want to follow up with you on one item. So just send me a quick email and I'll get something over to you. Just say, hey, following up from the YouTube live. Remember, Amazon, it's 100% behavioral. If they're not asking you behavioral questions, it's one of two things. They're asking you follow-up questions, or they're going off script. The system pulls only behavioral questions for them to ask. So you have to have great stories, 25 to 30 unique stories. You cannot repeat stories, and you need to be rigid on the STAR method. Drop the learnings, drop the follow-up questions. You got to get rigid and a little bit more concise. Now, LinkedIn, they're gonna be more like a Facebook. They're gonna lean a little bit behavioral, but they will ask open-ended questions. And I can tell you from what I know of people who work at LinkedIn, it's one of the best job environments out there. Currently in a final year of business student, and you're an expert in Codeforce. Okay, you have interest in competitive programming. What should you do now if you want to apply to any big tech company? I want you to just go for it. If this is a real passion and something that you can speak to and a real expertise that you think these companies could use, great. I don't know a lot about Codeforce, so I'm not an expert in that space. But again, anything that you're like super passionate about, super interested in, it's usually going to translate really well in the interviews. And obviously, if it's a skill set you have, that's just a nice added bonus. I hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, struggling to find the salary information for a strategy and ops GTM role in London, L4, L5, and any nuances for the GCA function. So yeah, L4, L5, pounds, like low hundreds, yeah, 120, 130K pounds for total comp. Remember, UK just pays less for tech, so that's what I would focus in on. That's what I've seen for my clients in the UK. And then any nuances for the GCA interview? Yeah, for strategy and ops, you're going to get something that's going to I feel like a really random question for strategy and ops is so easy because we just bring everything back to strategy and operations. And then you're probably going to get on the behavioral side something that's more like, tell me about a time you enhanced a complex strategy or complex operations or something like that. And then the more role specific GCA question, probably again, something where you have to revamp some form of a process or strategy to lead the organization to success. I know that's pretty high level, but I hope it helps. All right, I love this, just trying to get rich. If you're being under-leveled at Google compared to your current level at a FANG company, what should you do? Concern is that they can't meet your salary demand. Well, I mean, obviously, I want you to negotiate hard. There's multiple states, including California, for example, where they're not factoring in current comp. The question is just more about long-term, and do you think you can make more at Google during the long term? But they tend to down level quite a bit, and initial coming in the door comp is only good if you really, really negotiate. But I want you to be thinking about the long term, because let's say you should have been coming in as an L5, you're coming in as an L4. If you're right on the cusp, that promo will happen quickly and your comp will jump incredibly fast. If you have more questions, just let me know. Okay, we answered that question. Is it normal to have another round of final interviews after your panel interviews? It depends. It depends on where you're interviewing, but not typically normal to like redo everything. I would want to find out some more data from your recruiter for sure. No, no. 350K for an L4 TPM in Cali, no. Um, it depends where you're at in California, right? Like if you're in the Bay, then 250, 260, 270 if you had like an amazing negotiation, but 350, no. Not unless you had like a competing or some other data, but if you're in California, they will not take current comp into consideration. Now, those numbers would be lower if it was like LA or San Diego or another market. Is it normal to interview with an HM and then the recruiter says you're still in consideration but won't be able to schedule the interviews in the next 2 weeks? Marketing role. Notice they reposted the role to LinkedIn. Yeah, so it's performance review time, and so that can cause some delays, and we just don't know what's going on internally. So I don't think that this is a bad thing. We don't know. So just keep that pulse with your recruiter, and if you don't hear back, so won't be able to schedule in the next interviews in the next 2 weeks, like in 1 week. You want to say, hey, it's a week out. Like, here's my schedule over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Just be really, really proactive. Hey, Bridge. All right. So for Silicon Machine Learning PM, how much ML knowledge is required? I don't really know, but I'm guessing if it's in the title that it's going to be pretty extensive. Got to go back and ask the recruiter if you're at that stage, obviously. But any job that has machine learning in the title, I would expect you to be an expert in that space. Any tips for a TVC who's trying to convert to an FTE after being at Google as a UX designer for a year? Okay, so if you're not having really open and candid conversations with your leadership, with people in like roles, because um, obviously, if you're trying to convert UX designers, there's a lot of them. So you need to have really candid conversations with your current leadership, and then be speaking with leads on other teams about other opportunities as well. But you really want to set the tone and stage to say, okay, well, you want to set the tone and stage to be like, well, okay, if they say, well, you're not there yet, or you're not ready or anything, well, can we put together an action plan that would get me into the full-time interview process in 3 months, 6 months, et cetera? So set that agenda, set that plan. Oh, did everybody see that? The bricks and the coffee? Whoa, that was weird. Okay, that was cool. So you've interviewed for a SWE at Google Zurich, and your recruiter told you you did great. Hiring manager will come to you soon, but it's been over a month. No, that's not normal, and you should follow up right now. How does the salary ranges for L5? It really depends on the role, but across EMEA, it doesn't pay the same for the most part as tech is paying in the US. Now that can be a little bit dependent on market. There are some markets that pay a little bit better, like Zurich is just ironically, Zurich, to mention one market, does pay pretty well. But yeah, it really, really depends. But Spain, not as much data on Spain, but L5, what we've seen more in like the UK and across EMEA is like, low 100s in terms of euros, in terms of total comp, but it does vary market to market. Okay. Pre-recorded, no. No, this is not pre-recorded. We are officially live. You've interviewed for a suite. Okay, so we answered that question. You're not feeling great since it did not seem positive wording in the email. You'd love a little bit of a clue. Yeah, it makes waiting very tough. Yeah, I think that's just a communication skill set, right? Like that's Come on, like they can do better than that. And that does not mean negative. I have seen recruiters say, I need to talk to you. And then they get on the phone, they say, guess what? I have great news. So we can't read too much into it. We just have to wait. But yeah, I agree. It's tough. Okay. You felt like you crushed the RRKs and great on the GCA, but the leadership was so-so. Okay. All right. Can you post it and email me? Is there anything you should do to help your application stand out when it goes to hiring committee, such as adding work samples or writing? No, they're not going to look at that stuff. So anything that's already been submitted, that's what they're going to look at. Hey, how's it going? You signed an offer with Google for an account manager. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for showing up all the time. And this is just fantastic news. Again, we're never going to get sick of this. We always love this. So thank you for coming and letting us know. And obviously, if you want to pop in here every once in a while, please do. But thank you so much for letting us know. Oh, can you share the Slack? So, okay, so let me just go in here really quickly. Here's our Slack sign up. So just quickly, what's happening with the Slack group is that we have really driven, and I sit in the background on the Slack group. I let the community engage with each other. That is the purpose of Slack. I can't be in there every second answering every question, but what's happening in the community is people are starting to do practice interviews together. And that's free. You can practice with each other. So make sure you're going in there. The one thing I'm going to say with the Slack group is ask better questions. If you just say, what are they going to ask in the GCA interview? Or what happens in Googleyness and leadership? Or I'm interviewing for this role, help me. It's not as good as asking really, really specific questions. So the more specific you get, the more the community will help you. So please go in, use the Slack group. We're at like 1,200 members, I think 1,300 members. So people are really starting to help each other. It's really amazing to see. So get in there. Pull that down. Okay. We're 37 minutes in, and I know we're about 25 minutes behind on questions. If you haven't hit that like button, smash that like button. We think it's hilarious to say the smash word. And then if you haven't subscribed and you're liking what we're doing, please subscribe. Okay, what types of questions to expect from RRK marketing expertise and for Googleyness for a PMM role? Okay, so marketing RRK, that's going to be pretty straightforward, right? So anything that's marketing based, working on marketing projects on your own, working on collaboratively with stakeholders. Now with the PMM role, you're going to have more of that product lens on the RRK. Googleyness and leadership is one of the most straight up interviews you can get, meaning it's really going to be pretty similar across the board. So both sides of the coin, negative and positive, and always have that positive lens. Is it normal for Google not to disclose the base salary OTE for the position before the formal offer? Well, it depends on where you're located, but if they haven't disclosed that information, you can ask. I can tell you that whatever market, whatever level you are, OTE is going to be 42. It's like 42.8% for these like sales engineering type of roles. If it's an OTE role, it's like 42.8. That's the percentage of OTE. So if they give you the base, that's the OTE. I don't know what that question means. Does percentage matter? So if you want to come back and re-ask. Oh, I just asked, so I'll ask again. Hit that like button. Hi, Jeff. Love your channel. You moved to the US a year ago. You don't know the best place and how to approach to the right recruiter. Well, if you're trying to network your way in, all right, there's a second question. Just apply to the job posted in Glassdoor or LinkedIn, or find somebody in Google. Yeah, so I always recommend referrals, always, but I don't really recommend networking with recruiters. Typically, you should network with people more in the role. Remember, We can post this video in here, but it's a give first strategy. If you go in and ask for something, 0% chance that you hear back. You have to have that give first model, and we'll post that video in there to show you how to do it. Okay, we answered that question. And I know everybody, we get kind of behind on the questions. So for everybody hanging out, I sincerely appreciate it. We get a lot of questions and we want to make sure we get to everything as much as we can. If you get an opportunity to be on contract with Google, should we take it? I would and did. It's your opportunity to take a contract role, even if you have to leave a full-time role, and demonstrate your skill set and get hired full-time. I always recommend it. Well, not always. There's unique circumstances, of course, but for the most part, I do recommend it. Told you performed very strong Google leadership and RRK interview, but the role wasn't the right fit. Will doing the process again for a different job, how much will previous interviews hold in the decision? Yeah, it just depends on how soon you re-up. So yeah, if you re-up soon for another role, then they could consider some of this other feedback and push it through. Now, RRK, if it's a different role, you're going to have to do that over. But leadership, Googleyness and leadership interview, you might not have to do over. But yeah, they're obviously looking at the system, looking at previous feedback to see how you've done, to see if they want to give you another chance. How should one prep for a digital marketing vertical lead role for role-related knowledge, especially when not coming from a digital marketing background? That's tough. I want you to just really dive into the JD, look at some of the key pieces and about the job, in the responsibilities, the qualifications, but I want you to really do your research on digital marketing, because without that knowledge, it's going to be really tough to be successful, especially in open-ended questions. Your recruiter told me you have 4 weeks to find a team in the team match stage. I've never heard of a timeline on the team match stage piece. It could be because we're coming close to the end of the year and headcount's running out, but I don't know how you possibly could control that externally. So that's kind of a ridiculous thing to say. So you might want to get more clarification from them. You do not need a referral, but it helps. It helps to at least get your resume seen and get a shot at an interview. Because remember, millions and millions of people are applying every year. Your recruiter said that your technical rounds were good, but you had to redo G&L. I think I did it okay this time. Can G&L be a deal breaker? 100%. Have to pass that interview. And if you had to redo it and you only did okay, if you redo an interview, you really have to crush it. But we don't know. Your okay might have been great on the other end. So stay positive and come back and let us know how it goes. Yeah, so again, we're going to go back on this Googleyness and leadership interview. The tips are always going to be the same, negative and positive side of the coin. How do you deal with conflict, unethical, etc.? And then mentorship, inclusivity, all the positive stuff, open-ended and behavioral, and be positive. Okay. So HC said to do a redo. Okay, so if HC said to do a redo, yeah, it better be pretty good, because you can't really do a redo and get like a lean hire. It has to be a hire or strong hire, or HC is typically going to say it's not enough to move forward. I mean, can everybody say how cool this is with the bricks? I mean, I don't have any bricks in my apartment. This is kind of cool. Let's get some comments on these random bricks that are showing up on my coffee cup. I can't explain it. It's really fun though. Okay, so we answered that question. Hi, Jeff. You set up time with you this Sunday. Awesome. What does the appeal process look like for a program manager L4? Both recruiter and hiring manager believe I was undervalued. Yeah, so there's going to need to be additional documentation that's written up that really dives deeper into the feedback to say why you're a fit, and then we'll probably chat more, but sometimes occasionally that might mean an additional interview or two. But yeah, they're going to need to build a case. I did this sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully in my time at Google. They're rare instances, right? You're falling in the 1, 2, 3% case. It's a really, really low level instance. So we can talk more on Sunday, but those are some high level items. You're currently waiting on the HC results. Yes, the results can vary according to country, to office, to position, whether Bob's in a good or bad mood that day. Yeah, there's a lot of variables, all of which are 100% outside of your control. So this just becomes about patience and deep breaths and just kind of sitting back and waiting, which is very hard. Okay, so we did a recruiter interview that we outline a ton of questions that a recruiter should expect. So I can post that. I can post that in the YouTube description. And as always, if you want to get and see it now, there's a recruiter interview video that you can look up if you just click videos on our YouTube channel. Awesome content. Thank you. What should one study to prepare in their last 24 hours before the interview, and how to remain cool-headed at the same time? So if I had 24 hours left, I'd really be working on my cheat sheet. I'd be getting my go-to clarifying questions down. I'd be getting my frameworks down. I'd be really just titling my best behavioral examples. If you haven't seen the cheat sheet video, go ahead and take a look, because that's going to be really helpful for you at this stage. Then the last note is an hour before, shut down, meditate, go for a walk. Don't really engage your brain too much, because your brain needs that downtime, and science supports what I'm saying. And good luck. Hey, Manisha. Okay, just finished your third on-site round of interview as we speak. Interview is able to answer all the questions. While answering, however, they directed me towards a certain direction, and you did so. This is a good or bad thing. Does that have impact on my review? So like leading and guiding and directing can sometimes mean that they actually did really like you and they wanted to support and help you. So we don't really know, but usually when you get interviewers who like to work with you and lead and guide you, that's usually a good sign. It means they like you enough to help you. If it's a really bad candidate, they're probably not going to help as much. So I typically see this as a good sign, but we'll just have to wait and see. Does Google hire recruiters with below 2 years of experience? Sure. Yeah, around a couple of years is usually a good barrier to get in the door. Completed last interviews for CE, customer engineer, data analytics 2 weeks ago. Okay. The last update from the recruiter was, oh, sorry. I'll come back to that. Recruiter was, overall, the team would be interested in considering your candidacy further from here. However, we are exploring the option to secure additional headcount allocation before making a final decision. It probably means that they have more than one person that they like, and they're trying to get more headcount, or they hired somebody else during the process, because CE data analytics is they hire a lot for that role, and they're just trying to secure more headcount because they totally ran out of headcount. So a couple of different potential scenarios. Okay, so we're coming back to this. Since you kept asking them to let me know if this is what you're looking for. Okay, so you kept checking in, which is good. I think that's probably going to be a positive sign. Should we tailor our interviewing experience to the interview we have, or stay specialized in what we know? I don't like for candidates to get too far off of what they know. If we try and switch it up too much, yeah, it's going to mess with us a little bit. So I would say, yeah, if you want to specialize it a little bit, but stay focused in on what you know. Don't make it harder than it already is. You're in the third round today. It was a simple hypothetical question. I took much time, and the interviewer did help directingly. No, it's not a negative. Okay, you've been approached for Amazon L5 program manager. No, it is absolutely not. All behavioral, only examples, 25 to 30 examples, never repeat an example. Okay. Applying for a product manager interview at Google. Can you explain about the interview process in all rounds? You are going to get design questions, analytical questions, strategic questions, technical questions, and probably at least 1 to 2 estimation questions. These interviews have nothing to do with the role. So if you are interviewing for a product manager, Google Cloud Platform, they won't ask you any questions about GCP, maybe none. So it's heavily, heavily, heavily open-ended, 80 to 90% open-ended questions. And don't let your ideas get you off track. All the product managers we work with are unorganized. Great ideas, not a lot of organization. Got to get really, really organized and really focused. Those are some really tough interviews. You're welcome. What are RRK interviews like for people in the APMM program where it's a generic hire? You don't have marketing expertise. They say you don't need any. Yeah, I mean, again, they can say you don't need any, but bringing that expertise to the table is absolutely going to be helpful. So just do your research. Understand a little bit about how Google does marketing, like what the ad space looks like. Just do your research because other people are. Videos helped, even if you don't make it. Okay, awesome. Keep us updated. Jeff, for RRK interviews for head of business analytics roles. Hiring manager said he doesn't have a team and the role and you're interviewing should help him build the team. Okay, so these are a lot of internal based questions, unfortunately, that you're going to want to get a little bit more data from the hiring manager, if possible, in a follow-up casual conversation, asking the recruiter, head of business analytics roles, the head roles only fall at 3 levels. L6 and director, which are the most uncommon, director being the most uncommon, L6 being less common, and L7 being the most common. Some of these head roles have direct reports, some don't. Yes, it's really hard to know or have that data, but the recruiter should be giving it to us. Now, anybody who's going to come in at an analytics level, at a head role, you have to be incredibly strategic from an analytics perspective. I hope that helps. If someone gets a verbal confirmation from Google, how long should it take to receive the official offer? Well, it should be pretty quick, but remember, you really want to negotiate. So once you get confirmation that you've passed HC, just make sure you're setting the anchor high and negotiating really strong. Oh yeah, we scraped all of Glassdoor, specifically by we, IRIC, scraped all of Glassdoor, and we have all of Glassdoor's questions. So if you join our Slack group, you can get access to those. Is there a percentage we should stay within when negotiating? Used all your learnings, got the offer stage, awesome. Yeah, so basically, let's do some simple numbers. Let's say you think they're going to come in at 80K and you want to earn 100K. I would come in at 150K. I like coming in at a big number. Now, especially this is very, very easy when we're going after roles in big tech companies. They're used to people strongly negotiating. If I remember correctly, and I might not, but you might have gotten that range of 100 to 108. So 100 to 108, that probably means it's a 15% target bonus. Let's put it at 100, 115K. They're probably going to come in with a low stock grant, probably put you up to 135K. I mean, I'd be coming in at least 200K as my anchor. I just really like anchoring high, especially with the big tech companies. They're not going to run for the hills when you set the anchor high. They're going to push back, but they're not going to run for the hills. Okay, let's drop a like on this video. We're almost an hour in, and I think we are severely behind on the questions. So if you like what we're doing, please hang out. I'm gonna start churning and maybe hopefully picking up the pace a little bit to get to more of these questions. Thank you. John, I can read this. So the first question, for whatever reason, dropped off. So please hang out with us. Get those questions out there. I believe your question was, you asked for a pay raise and it was 8K off. You went into the Google RRK interview immediately diving into CFS framework, but the interviewer was not interested and turned off by it, frankly. Sorry to hear that. Your interviewer was a bad interviewer. If they don't like clarification, Google's guidance. Remember, Google is the one, go look at all their career pages, all that stuff. They're the one that guides on clarification. Some interviewers are going to say, I don't like clarification. But if we clarify, if we set the framework, remember, setting the framework casually is actually answering the question and then solving for it. I do get this feedback sometimes. Not every interviewer likes coming in with that specific structure, but what's the alternative? The alternative is having no structure and winging it and not knowing if we really stayed organized in our answer. So I'm sorry to hear that they didn't like it, but the vast majority of that coaching works. You're going to get interviewers who don't like any style that you come in with. So come back and tell us more about what they didn't like. Should questions be aligned with the type of interviewer you have? Yes. If you notice and you look at Sue's background and Sue is like strongly technical, yeah, you probably want to lean a little bit more technical. But going back to that question that we covered about 10 minutes ago, don't get out of your wheelhouse either, because that's going to make it really hard if you're trying to pivot and be a different person with Sue than with Jane, then with Bob. So stay in your wheelhouse. But if you know that Sue, for example, is heavily technical, lean a little bit more technical. You're going into an interview with Microsoft role in 1 to 2 weeks. Any tips to provide to crack the interview or highlight what they are looking for and how they're different from Google? Yeah, they'll lean slightly more behavioral, and they do have a bar raiser as well. So that's a tougher interview there. Their bar raiser isn't quite as tough as Amazon from what I've heard, but focus on the same things. How does Google decide to assign recruiters to departed Google employees to hire them back in the future? So the strategy is for Zooglers, that's what ex-Googlers are called. There are teams that are really dedicated to every single facet, right? So there's definitely a team that tracks and follows declines. There's definitely a team that comes back and reaches out to people who have left, Zooglers. So they have specific dedicated teams for this. They are tracking you. And if they can get you back, especially if you left with a really good performance or high rating, it's likely that you will hear back from them at some point. You're expecting a Google offer for a strategic cloud role, but no comps out there. How can you figure out the range? Yeah, come back to us and give us more data, please. In terms of next steps for negotiating an offer, which is a better response? Could you meet me halfway, or what is the best way you could go about getting closer to my number? If you have other thoughts, would love to hear it. Okay, thanks, John. So if you went in for a pay raise, they're 8K off. Yeah, I think it's fine to say, the initial number that I mentioned was X, and it's still $8,000 off my expectations. I'd really like it. I want that 8K. I think that at this point, based on our conversations, that's a fair and equitable number for the market. But at a minimum, I would really like to see if you could meet me in the middle, because that is going to be a fair ask. So something that has like a soft pitch and tone is going to be pretty valuable. This is tricky. 8K is not a ton, but it's enough that you want to push back. Okay, love your content. Quick one. After applying, following conversations with the HM and recruiter told to get back ASPAP. It's been more than 2 weeks. Can you politely follow up? Yep, I'd follow up now, and you can do that politely. Failed Google interview 4 months back. How long should you wait to reapply? What are the chances that the recruiter would shortlist your resume? It depends on how the feedback was. Typically, I think like 6 months is a great cadence, or maybe we're looking towards just next year. I wouldn't reapply. I'd reconnect with your recruiter if you can. We have a video on that for how to do that. It's called Applying After Application or Failure or something. I can't remember the exact title. It's one of our more recent videos. If you want to check it out, we'll also put a link to that video in the YouTube description. It's been a week since you completed your interviews. Recruiter hasn't shared an update. Emailed him and he said he'll get back. What is the turnaround time? We don't know. Just stay in touch with your recruiter. If you haven't heard back by like noon on Friday, I would reach out again. Okay, same question. Thanks, Jeff, for your fantastic content. You're done with all the on-site rounds for a cloud consultant. You're aware that feedback for RRK 1 was 2 was positive. Now it's waiting time. What's the approximate turnaround time? How frequent do these HCs meet? When I asked the question after GCA, is there something I can take away? HM mentioned everything was good. Bit of data points were needed. Then you realized one of your GCA answers was up to the, okay. So there's a lot of items here that are kind of in this category that I can't answer all these questions. So turnaround time on feedback, it's supposed to be 48 to 72 hours. It almost never is. If you haven't heard back in a week, follow up. I don't know how oftenly, that's not a word. I don't know how often they're meeting for cloud consultant HCs, but for GCP, my best guess is that they'd probably be meeting a couple times a week. So you're not going to have to wait for forever for HC. Hey, if the hiring manager liked the GCA interview and you missed a couple data points, no big deal. It happens to everybody. The goal is not to be perfect in that interview because nobody's perfect. How much of your current compensation information depends on where you live. In some places they can ask, but now they're like not even asking. Like in India, they stopped asking like a month ago. Like obviously there's more states that keep coming up and popping up where they cannot ask at all. There are a few states where your current comp still can help. Places in EMEA where your current comp still can help you. So we only want to use it if it helps us and it's applicable. Okay, Ron. Good to see you again. Still hoping. It's been 8 months after rejection. You're starting to prepare again. Where should you start? Okay, so based on our data and time together, go back through those recordings, go back through those practice questions, go back through your frameworks, and start churning through it again. Just get back into prep mode. You were doing a really good job of prepping really hard, so don't change anything you were doing in the past. Just get back to it. Do you need to be referred repeatedly after 30-day expires, or does the referral stay visible on other roles? Yeah, so this is tricky. I want you to just continue to push on your referrals to see if you can get through, but after 30 days, it tends to go pretty cold. So keep pushing. Okay. People like the bricks. Okay, so we're pretty far behind. Again, what kind of filter is this? This is pretty cool. All right, let's get caffeinated. Let's keep going. Okay, so we're starting to catch up here a little bit. Not as far behind. We're at over an hour. If you like what we're doing, if you appreciate what we're doing, please hit that like button. If you've never subscribed to our channel, we put out a lot of content, so please subscribe. Diving deeper into strategic cloud advisor role, since there are no comps and no mention of what level they're hiring, coming from a senior manager role about to go to a director role in my company. Okay, but where you're currently at is not going to influence how they compensate you. So come back and tell us what level and what market you're in. Sorry, I'm just going to flip up. So better prepared for the numbers and counteroffers. Let us know the level target, like what you think you're targeting at, L5, L6. Typically, these roles are L5s for the most part. For most of what I've seen, L5, L6. And then let us know the market you're in, because that's going to be a driver. Don't prepare for a counteroffer You're leaving for a reason. If you're accepting a counteroffer, 90% of people who accept counteroffers are gone within a year. Really think about that stat. It's really important. For Eng manager role, how much database and algo gets asked to what depth? Yeah, so ask your recruiter, but Eng manager roles are going to have to be hands-on. You're going to have to go through coding and algorithm interviews. So pretty in depth, in my opinion. Oh, sorry, we covered that. Okay, Iric and I are aligned here, even though I'm about 20 minutes behind. If you like what we're doing, please hit like. Finished virtual on-site and told they're not moving forward. Recruiter highlighted that there was a lot of positive feedback and wants to stay in touch. Yeah, so that's a good sign. Remember, not everybody passes the interview process at any company. Stay in touch with your recruiter. Send them roles that you're interested in. We can highlight that video in the YouTube description, but definitely stay in touch with them. There's a very specific process. We created some templates that you should follow for following up with them, especially if you did well and they're indicating that you did well. Okay, for an engagement manager role, DS algo is not. Oh, for an engine manager role, data structure algo is not asked unless you take choice of coding round, but expect design rounds to be super tough. An interviewer might expect you to solve using some algos there. Yeah, I would just say be prepared. I haven't seen there being a choice on whether you can have a coding round or not, but Uday, maybe give us some more background if you're currently, I don't know where we don't know what company. So I guess if we're casting a wide net, we can't say for sure what's going to be asked because we don't know the company. But yeah, I think you can choose on getting a coding round. I think that really depends on the company. Thank you. Position you applied for in Google NYC is not available. They want you to relocate to the West Coast. How likely is it to negotiate this condition and stay in New York? Yeah, so things are getting more flexible. So that's the really good news. It's just such a case by case basis. It depends so much on the team. Some teams are way more flexible than others. I say interview, get the job, negotiate the offer, and then talk about location. Like get them to want to hire you first. It's much, much easier to ask for this once they want to hire you. Per new guidelines, you can choose between code review or coding round, or for CR round is very easy. Again, I'm not sure where this context is coming from. So if you want to give us a little bit more data, that would be great. HC does not care about comp. Recruiter does not ask for comp generally if HC is not cleared yet. Okay, so we're getting a lot of data in here. And so Uday, I'm guessing that you're currently there. And so if this is some good data that you're sharing, sincerely appreciate it because obviously we love it when people introduce data. I want to know kind of like what team you're on or if this is just something you've seen across the board. And then for the later stuff, yeah, I don't want to worry too much about that. I want to like know a little bit more about what's happening on the Eng manager side of things. Thanks for the honest reply. For the redo of G&L, recruiter said the feedback looks good to them and asked to share expected comp. How do you think HC will respond? I don't know. I don't know. But the recruiter giving you positive feedback is a good sign to start. All right. Okay. Are technical interviews and behavioral interviews weighted the same? They are. I applied for a strategic manager role in Google 2 months ago and you had your RRK interview. The recruiter told me that the interviewer was impressed with my product knowledge, but they were looking for people with sales experience. How long should I wait before I apply again? I would say don't apply, work with your recruiter. And again, we have that video that I'll post in the YouTube description, but you can go to our YouTube channel now. Got to build the relationships and work with the relationships we have. It's much harder to get in through applying. Okay, thanks, Uday. Yeah, we appreciate your feedback. If the hiring committee rejects a candidate for an Eng manager position, can we apply before the cooling period? You can always reapply, right? But it would have to be like an Eng manager for one type of thing and then another type of thing. If it's just the same role, it's not going to happen. So you can reapply like pretty soon, but it just would have to be for a little bit of a different role. Hi, Jeff. For product specialist role, do I choose instances for my current job, which is more client facing, but less marketing, or old job where you chose marketing campaigns? Both. Use both. Have a little bit of diversity in your answers. I think there's such this fear to go back. It's just hard to go really far back because we forget things. That's all. But yeah, I would say go back a little bit and use both sorts of examples. They're both going to have merit and value. Interviewing with Facebook and Google at the same time. You told your Google recruiter about your involvement with Facebook, but didn't finally get the Facebook over after the on-site team match stage with Google. The Google recruiter knowing not about getting Facebook impact your chances at Google? And do I tell the recruiter that you didn't get the Facebook offer if she asked for an update? Yeah. You did the right thing, right? If they asked if you were engaged with anything else, you're like, sure, yeah, I'm interviewing with Facebook. Don't proactively give them that information. If they say, what's going on with Facebook, you can say, I had a fantastic experience. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm just moving forward with Google at this time. It didn't work out with Facebook. Like, yeah, of course. Be candid, be clear, be honest, and it's no big deal. Like, if Google likes you, great. It's not a deterrent because Facebook decided to say no. It's just, it would have been nice to get it competing from Facebook if Google was your preferred company. Microsoft interviews for non-tech roles are heavily focused on business partnering and leadership. They also ask questions on projects you've worked on. Amazing. Thank you so much for this data point. This is great, and we love this. And same with Uday. Like, please come, give us information. Like, share the knowledge with the group. That's so amazing for the community. So thank you for that. Be interviewing for an AI Consultant GCP. Any tips? Yeah, the consulting roles, they're hiring like crazy for GCP sales engineers, customer engineers, any sort of GCP consultant, scale specialists, TAMs. Like, across the board, there are so many client-facing roles for GCP right now. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to get nuanced. You're going to get niched down. You're going to be focused in on AI. So how do you partner with all the other people in all the other roles to make sure that you're setting up the client for success? So do not forget about your team members, and then obviously get into the weeds of the technical stuff. Each interviewer at Microsoft has a different competency focus. The recruiter should prep you on this. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The recruiters should be prepping us. I prepped every single candidate that made it to the on-site stage for half an hour of prep, of coaching, of practice. Remember, if recruiters aren't prepping you or sharing information with you, who are they hurting? They're hurting you, but they're also hurting themselves. These elite companies, whether it's Microsoft or Google or Facebook, they're all very hard to get into. A little bit of prep and coaching goes a really long way. Think about how many of my candidates benefited from getting coaching from me beforehand. It's valuable. I set them up for success, and I wasn't doing anything wrong. Google wanted to get those people in the door. So thanks for saying that. Really, really helpful. Okay. So for a PGM role at Google and PM role at Facebook. Okay. Very, very different roles, right? So product is admittedly more competitive than program management. It just is. They're both tough, but product is just really, really tough right now. What does trending positive feedback from the recruiter mean after the onsite? It means that the feedback looks positive overall, but maybe they don't have all of it. I can't tell you for sure because I can't see the feedback, but that's how I would take it. I skipped yours. Okay. Sorry. Can you come back and put it in there again? I sincerely apologize. I did not see it, obviously, but come back. If you're still here, would love to try again or try for the first time. Are there specific topics for each on-site interview, i.e. Python interview, Googly interview, etc.? Yeah, there are specific interviews, but it depends on the role. So it is role specific. You know, a lot of interviews will have the Googliness and leadership and GCA interview, but some are going to be just much more technical focused, just like coding and algorithms and system design and maybe one behavioral. So it does vary candidate to candidate. So I would just say ask your recruiter. Great question. Great question. Yearly base increases in the forms of merits. The merits at Google are not joke merits. It's not like 1% or 2% or 3%. Oftentimes the merits are very good. 6, 7, 8%. They're big merit increases. And then you get a base salary raise when you get promoted, and that's usually much higher, 15, 18, 20%. Finished your TPM on-site interviews. Recruiter emailed me and said they're not moving forward, but discussing with the hiring team for another opening. What does that mean? Excuse me. It means that they're looking at you for other opportunities. You just need to stay on top of them and follow up. Sometimes that's just kind of lip service, but if you stay on top of them, hopefully they'll be able to give you more data. Good luck, and sorry that you didn't make it through the first time. After on-site, recruiter said feedback was trending positive. Okay, I think we just answered that, or do we have two trending positives? Well, if we do, okay, but we'll answer the second half anyway. You have another FANG offer you need to respond to. Is it possible to get an offer before team matching? No, can't get an offer before a team match. So you need to push and poke and prod your recruiter and let them know, hey, like I have a competing offer, so get on it. If it's trending positive, great, but I have a competing offer and I'm going to walk away if you don't do something. Of course, you're going to say that much nicer than I just said it, but you have a competing offer. It has expiration date. Can you please push the process for me? Find out for them, but make sure you're pretty stern. Can you apply for Google USA if you don't have an H1b right now? Right now, you're on an L1 visa, and there seems to be very little chance of getting an H1b. This is really tricky. I'm very, very removed from sponsorship items because I'm running my own business and I'm not in corporate anymore. So my best guess is that whatever pulse you have is likely correct. The visa situation is not as friendly as it used to be, which is super, super unfortunate. So I would say the data and knowledge you have is probably as good, if not better, than what I have. But I would still try if you can. You live in NYC. What is the base / OTE for an account executive? I need to know the level. I would need to know the level and understanding. Okay, so like, yeah, I mean, I want you to get the base salary range. Again, the most common OTE that I'm seeing and working with is for more like customer and sales engineers, specifically sales engineers. The OTE is 42.8%. Account executives, I'm not sure what it is, but maybe come back with a level and I can give you maybe a little more data. Interviewed recently and had positive feedback, but for another role within Google. How many times do hires come back from this process? Interviewed recently. Please come back. I don't understand the question. If you can just clarify for me a little bit, I'm a little confused by the question. Yeah, L6 Strategic Cloud Advisor. And this was in regards to figuring out the comp for a new role. Absolutely. I'm sorry, just to come back with another question. Can you remind me where this is located? I can tell you like L6 Strategic Cloud Advisor. If we're in like a premium market, like a premium plus market like Bay or New York, absolutely, I would be trying to push that offer up to 400K a year. In the premium markets, LA, Seattle, DC, Boston, and Boulder. I'd be pushing up to 350, 375. But in the premium markets for an L6, I'd really be pushing towards 400 if you can. Interviewing for an SFA role at Google and not sure on what to say for total comp when it comes to all sites, different ranges. What is a good total comp? Come back to me with the level. Senior financial analyst. So if it's any non-tech, senior financial analyst is probably going to be an L5. Any non-tech Bay Area, I'm trying to shoot for 300K in total comp with a very strong negotiation. And 300K in total comp is a 4-year yearly average, not 300K the first year, 300K average over 4 years, which means that first year would be much higher. Interviewed for a TAM. Okay, so I think this is a good follow-up. Okay, interviewed for a TAM, but it required specialized skill set that you didn't have. Interviewer had positive feedback and said you should move forward for the same role in a different vertical. And then going back to your previous question, how many times do hires come from this process? Well, that I don't know the specific number, but really work with your recruiter to figure out if you can get in front of roles that are going to be a good fit. Is it okay to ask your recruiter for more insight into particular product groups, teams, primary locations? You can ask your recruiter anything. Yeah, I would say ask more as opposed to less and see what they're willing to answer for you. Where can you find the Slack link? Ask and you shall receive. But if you just go practiceinterviews.com/Slack, if for any reason that doesn't work, practiceinterviews.com and our free resources, you can sign up for the Slack group there. Thanks. All right, everybody, we are hitting an hour. We're at 11:22. I think I'm only about 10 minutes behind. I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit. I obviously want to answer all these questions as much as we can, so I'll keep going as long as I can. If you just hopped on, please hit that like button. And if you've never subscribed to our channel, please subscribe. Is every on-site interview forwarded to HC? Yes. So if you've interviewed 5 times, all that interview feedback is captured and sent to HC. They're really only fixated on the previous feedback. If there's some questions in the current feedback, they'll reflect back to that previous feedback to say, oh, we asked a similar question before. Did they improve? Did they enhance their skill set in this area? Hi, Ignacio. Cloud Consultant, FYI, I had a 6 to 7 question during your G&L from the sales team, more behavioral and a couple of hypothetical. Okay. I felt one of the answers was up to the mark. The rest were well. Okay. Thanks, JK. What else? What else you got for us? Also, interviewer was pushing me to wrap up soon, asked me to just jump into the actions thought process directly for the last 2 to 3 questions. What does this effect have? Yeah, so if you followed JK, what they were asking, and you just jumped in and you did what they said, fine. Clearly they had an agenda and you had gotten a little bit behind, or both of you had gotten a little bit behind in the agenda. No big deal, like not a big deal at all. So the fact that they were wanting to get more questions in, that's fine. As long as you pivoted and pushed into the pieces of the answer that they wanted to hear, great. Sometimes that's going to happen. Okay, amazing content. You're in the middle of the TPM process. The TPM role is strongly linked to cybersecurity. What would be your advice to prepare for the technical interviews? So you're going to get you're going to get 2 technical judgment interviews. Now this is still going to be program and project based for the most part. So just be really, really leaning in and thinking about technical judgment as it pertains to cybersecurity when you're getting into the solutioning of your open-ended questions. Now, anything that's straight technical, still clarify it, make sure you know the path and then solve. But anything more vague, open-ended, I want you to imagine you're in X scenario. When you solution, think about the technical judgment behind cybersecurity. That's going to be the most helpful advice I can give you. Okay. So good to contact the hiring manager when interviews are in process because you know the hiring manager from your current job. I mean, contacting hiring manager for more understanding. Yes, if you know them and you feel like you have good rapport and good relationship, poke, but poke gently. Say any advice or guidance that you would give, right? So just like really gentle, really nice. I want you to be really, really careful. That's the most important part. Excuse me. Okay. Somehow I jumped way ahead. Okay, so I answered that. I answered that one. You didn't make it past the first round for Google Account Strategist interview. Really bummed, but how do you get back into the game? Up your ads knowledge. Really start practicing on your interview skill set more. It's really hard to try and practice interviews when we're not actively interviewing, but you just got to be ready to go. But what I see a lot for these types of roles and the account strategist roles, your competitors have a ton of ads knowledge. And even though they tell you you don't need it, it's definitely a difference maker, a game changer in these interviews. So if you need to up your knowledge in that area, and then obviously prep and practice. There's a Google coding practice to prepare for the Google coding test on October 9th. Would the submission code could successfully I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. You might want to dig around online. Only submit one from 2 questions. I mean, I would say that your likelihood, if you're only doing one of the 2 questions and they ask for 2 answers, your competition is going to be fierce. So again, if I'm reading that question right, I would try and get both done as much as you can. How to ask for a Google referral. That's a long game. You network with graciousness and kindness in a pay it forward model. Jane, came across your profile, love your background, wanted to share a quick article with you about what's going on in the AI ML space, if that's their expertise, if that's the type of job you're going after. If you go online and ask Google employees to give you a referral and you don't know them, 0% chance it will happen. You just have to network with a gracious, giving first model, and it will happen over time. We have a video on that. It's going to be linked in the YouTube description, so make sure you check out that video. Recruiter miscommunication resulted in more than 50% of your on-sites being for a SWE role instead of expected GPL role. You're quite stumped by some of the coding questions. What are the odds the recruiter will be able to get me another set of on-site interviewers that are more in line with my actual potential role? So you need to have a really candid conversation with them to say, look, things happen, no worries, but it's really, I need to get aligned for my role. If they don't do it, they're going to feel your pain on the back end because you will crush them in the survey. Because so often we get this one shot and then we can't be hurt on that one shot by the recruiter. So you just need to have a tough conversation and say, look, like, these were not the right interviews. I understand things happen, be very gracious and kind, but say, I think I deserve an opportunity to interview for the role that I was interviewing for. They should agree. If for any reason they don't make that happen, the survey is your opportunity to make sure that it never happens to anybody else. And that's a pay it forward model. And you will not be dinged for future opportunities because you give strong feedback on a recruiter. They cannot put notes in the system that talk negatively about you. In any sort of audit, if that was seen, they get fired on the spot. So give strong feedback, especially when they don't follow through. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Be gracious and kind and see if you can get those interviews again. Sorry that happened. When should we be the first email sent to a recruiter after the last onsite? Up to 5 business days, nothing after that. Don't wait longer than 5 business days. Your Google Suite onsite yesterday and you bombed, what are the 4 interviews? Are you done? No, not necessarily. Sometimes we just don't do well in one interview, but overall, they liked us. Maybe you just get an opportunity to redo that interview. You're not done. It doesn't work that way there, Brian. Like, you could have another chance. So I don't want you to be too disappointed. Not yet. You're having a recruiter interview for a cloud TSD role. Please guide us to prepare. It's an informal chat. I did a video. You can go watch that video on my YouTube channel now. We'll get this YouTube description updated with some of these videos, but super casual chat. Show up on time. Communicate well. Shorter answers are better. And be gracious and kind, and then ask them great questions. Really listen. Should be very straightforward and basic. Remember, for a technical solutions role, they might ask you technical questions. There might be a bit of a technical screen, so just be prepared for that. I used to ask my technical solutions candidates, I used to give them a technical screen, so I would anticipate that. I had to give additional interviews for a suite role. Is there any chance of making it? Yeah, additional interviews, we can make it with additional interviews. If the additional interviews went well, absolutely we can make it. Any tips for GPL, Google Product Lead? I'm not sure what GPL is. Come back and let me know. My recruiter is looking for hiring managers before my on-site interview. Is that a good or bad thing? You haven't seen a lot of information on this. Okay, we talked a little bit about this in the team match stage. Sometimes the team match comes before on-site. It is less common, but occasionally it happens. They want to get you aligned with a team, so it's not a bad thing. You just hope that happens sooner rather than later, but this is a less common way for them to go through the process, but it still happens. Good luck. Is team matching for all roles, for cloud consultant, also customer eng, had this team matching? Team matching happens only if they don't have a specific hiring manager in mind throughout the process. Then you have to team match. They will not hire you without a team ever. So you only get hired there with a team. Ignacio, you're in the middle of Google TPM for GCP. TPM role. Okay, so we answered that question. You're in your team matching stage for L5 designer NYC. The recruiter said there isn't much headcount, and we will reevaluate in 2 weeks if no one comes back with a match. Is that bad? The team matching stage, Mike, super tricky. So it just might mean that it may not happen this year just because headcount is getting lean. You might just have to wait. But remember, if you've done good, there's going to be an opportunity. But yeah, headcount's starting to get leaner and leaner as we get into October. Let me know if you have any other questions. Interviewing for a Google PM on-site, don't have a tech background. Yeah, this is tricky. So this happens with a lot of my clients now. These PM roles are getting much more technical, and that's why they're paying as high as they're paying. So just be doing any research you can on the types of technical questions that they're going to ask. You know, they're usually not too crazy. Like, why is Gmail search slower than Google search? Like, they're going to be like kind of high level like that, but you just want to be doing your research on these technical questions because they are tougher interviews. So in any way that you can prepare, the best thing to do is going to be to look at practice questions. And we have a ton of those questions on our app. Any tips for Google Cloud Data Warehouse Engineer or Google Strategic Customer Engineer? You're having your first interview at the end of October. The data warehouse engineer is going to be more in the weeds technical, where a strategic cloud engineer is going to be more people oriented. So I would say on the first one, the more heavy duty eng, I want you to focus a little bit more on the technical side. On the strategic cloud engineer, more on the people side, but both are going to have to be a mix. You're going to have to talk about the technical side of things and then how you work with people as well. I know that that is super high level. I hope it helps. L5 UX designer, New York. At least 300K a year in total comp. Designers, it's a pretty competitive landscape, so maybe into the low threes in total comp on a yearly average. Remember, I'm always focused on a 4-year average, so that first year could be high threes up to 400K. What's the best role for a non-technical person with 5 years of administrative experience in the medical and financial fields? Love your channel, watched it a lot, preparing for your SWE interviews. Whoa, all right, Edgar, I'm totally confused. You're a non-technical person with administrative experience, but you're interviewing for SWE roles? Come back and tell us more. For non-tech administrative, the administrative business partner is always the role I recommend. What is the ballpark total comp for L6 strategy principal versus L7? Wait a second. What is the ballpark total comp for L6 strategy principal versus L7? L6, I want to get in the Bay 400 plus in total comp a year, and L7, I'm trying to get 500K plus total comp per year, 4-year average. You have 2 years of experience for an account executive role, so what level would that be? Well, account executives are usually hired at a little bit of a higher level. So I don't know. I mean, account executives, maybe you should go for a lower level role, or maybe you have all these years of experience and then just 2 years at the account AE level. Tell me more, Omar. When do headcount approvals happen? Biweekly, monthly? Your recruiter said if everything's positive, you need to. Headcount varies so greatly depending on role. Headcount planning is going on right now for next year. It's total mess. If this is Google, it takes forever. But what could happen is like maybe you're interviewing for Sue's team and Sue runs out of headcount, but Jane has 3 headcounts. Sue's like, Jane, can I steal a headcount? And if it makes sense and they get all the approvals, it can happen. So it's happening constantly. It's fluid. Is it a good idea to apply for positions in Singapore, Dublin, and US from India without work authorization for mid-level roles, or just stick to India, work for a year? The latter. Yeah. Obviously, all those markets are awesome. Singapore, Dublin, and the US are great markets. Ideally, if you can start in your own market and transfer, that's a great way to do it. SCA role was in DC, location was public sector. You said 350 to 375 total comp. That's correct. I believe because we said L6, right? L6 in total comp for that market would be a good offer. In the team match phase, talked to 4 teams. Recruiter mentioned 1 denied, but 3 are interested, but talking to others. Yep, they're still unsure about your candidacy, but if 3 are still interested, that's a good sign. What is the expected total comp? Oh, wow, we're getting a lot of total comp questions. So I do want to give everybody a resource. Like, of course, I'm happy to do this, but I don't want to necessarily just be the comp machine who's providing data that can vary depending on your negotiation skills, depending on location, depending on a lot of factors. L5, L6, account executive in the Bay Area for Google versus Microsoft in Redmond. L5, 300K plus 4-year average. L6, I'm trying to push up to that 400K 4-year average. And then you instantly have to down ticket by at least 10 to 15% for Redmond and Microsoft. The comp should be reasonably close, but Seattle's going to pay less for sure. or Redmond, sorry. Why is there a review stage before the offer? Great question, Mike. I did that video yesterday. The review stage before the offer, are we talking about hiring committee or are we talking about something else? They'll be on YouTube. So you can go on YouTube and watch this live after it's done. If you get rejected in the direct first round of a technical interview at Google at a specific country, if I apply for another country for the same position, entry level, will you be called for an interview? Maybe, maybe not. I just can't tell you that answer. I don't know how you did in the interview, but they're going to see that. If they like your background, they're going to see that you were recently rejected. So just keep that in mind. You can do it immediately. But again, is that valuable? Is that the best step? Have you learned anything from that interview that you could have done better? And how did it go? Are they just going to look at that feedback and shut down the application? Are they even going to look at that application? Things to consider. What is the cool down period? I would say, it's just an impossible question to answer. It just depends on if you want to go for the same exact role, a year. I would wait a year. Now, if it's a different role, it could be right now. It's also going to depend on the company needs, how busy that role is. So there's so many factors involved. Same exact role, same location, though I would say 1 year. Okay, quality assurance specialist role, you're due for your third round. What rounds have you had so far? Do you have any interview tips specifically for Google Release TPM? Yeah, more generically TPM, I would watch our program management videos and really establish those strong frameworks. Remember that the TPM roles are going to have two technical fundamentals, technical judgment interviews. So just make sure you're bringing in that good release knowledge into those interviews. But definitely watch our overarching program management interviews. So we're at an hour and 42 minutes in. You noticed I'm trying to pick up the pace a little bit because I'm constantly I'm about 16 minutes behind on the questions. I do have to hard stop at noon, so I'm going to do my best to get through as many questions as we can in the 2 hours that we have. If you have additional questions that I just don't get to, throw them in the comment section. If you're hanging out with us, you haven't hit that like button, or you haven't subscribed to our channel before, please do. I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit, so I'm not trying to go too fast in your questions. I just want to get to as many as I can. TAM role needed senior level knowledge about CPG and retail. Previous TAM focus was in oil and gas. Received an email this morning to move on to the third round, so fingers crossed. Awesome. How to slow down interviewer. My interviewer kept talking in pace that I couldn't control. I tried to breathe and take breaks, but just doesn't want to stop. Any suggestions? Yeah, Jimmy, this is a tough one. So at a certain point, if our interviewer is dominating or just it's not working, you just need to stop and be like, Bob, how can I get more connected with you? I'm feeling like a little disconnected, and obviously I'm so excited about the role, but I'm struggling to make a connection. What can I do better? Like, what can we change? Because at that point, you have nothing to lose. But interviewers are going to interrupt you. They're going to jump in as much as you can. Deep breaths and just take the path they're going down. But sometimes that's just impossible to control because they control everything. So, yeah, it's a really, really tough situation. And remember, that's why all my advice is absolutely terrible if we're not adapting and adjusting to our interviewer. So good luck. And yeah, that's the best advice I have. Is there a short feedback response after on-sites? And is the defill on all feedback, Steve, should be detailed because it's not only for now, but for the future. How different is the Microsoft interview process from Google for an architect role. Okay, so JK, I think I'm going to ask you to go back and watch this recording. I think we were at about an hour in, where we had some really good feedback from somebody who either interviewed at Microsoft, or I think it was Verna, who came in, if that's the right name, and told us a little bit more about Microsoft. So I don't know a ton about Microsoft's process, but I know it does have a mix of behavioral and open-ended. I know they're leadership driven. I know they have a bar raiser, but for an architect role, I just don't have all the insights into both organizations. Shared a lot of information for PM interviews. Any advice for program manager for supply and demand plan interview questions? Yeah, I just think for the supply chain, we just want to keep current landscape and challenges in mind, right? So the supply chain is it's crushed in every single aspect. So I want you to be building that into your answers and thinking about it as much as you can when you're setting the systems, when you're working with vendors. We've got to understand the current timeline, the current landscape, just based on current demand. You have a slow recruiter from the beginning. Been 2 weeks since your HM interview at Google. I asked her for feedback 1 week ago, no response. Nettie, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. If you don't hear back, I want you to follow up again this week by like noon on Friday if you don't hear back, right? Because at this point now, it's starting to get a little ridiculous. So just be kind and gracious in all your messages. Okay, Google product lead, but now I don't know the question. So I'm just trying to go back. Oh, any tips for a Google product lead? Yeah, I mean, I think the number one piece that I'm going to always churn on for a Google product lead, and I'm trying to get back to where we are. Google product lead is design, strategy, analytical, technical, and estimation, and anticipate just a ton of open-ended questions. We've seen this just across the board. If you're talking about Google specifically, just expect a lot of random open-ended questions. Okay. All right, good. Yeah, the HC video was a fun one to do. People are obviously watching it, which we are really, really psyched about. How do you know if the team is considering additional interviews after all the rounds before giving you a response? Yeah, Steve, they'll tell you. How is compensation determined at Google? I see candidates with a wide compensation difference. The wide compensation difference is based on people who did and did not negotiate. They're going to pay 75, the 75th percentile based on market data, but you can really push that by negotiating. The discrepancy is based on negotiating and not negotiating. And remember, if you're looking at like levels.fyi, the only ones you should be looking at are 0 years of experience, because anybody with experience, that's gonna sway things quite a bit. Final interview with a skip level manager today for marketing role. What types of questions? Kevin, really be thinking about questions that are driven towards strategy, process, leadership, but it could be anything from a marketing perspective. So in your answers, you want to think about how are you contributing to the team? How are you taking things off of leadership's plates, etc. The other thing, skip lead, less is more. Be a little bit more concise in your answers. Leaders like less. So be thinking in that manner, and good luck. You're welcome. What market? What market? Oh, this is, I mean, New York, L4, PGM, 250 total comp 4-year average. Atlanta, drop it down by probably, I would say 50K at least. Yeah. Thank you for your answer. See what options have for yourself. Okay. Thanks, Edgar. Wow, we're getting to so many questions about salary information, which I want to give because I know how important it is. But GCP architect, the US, the markets are so different market to market. So I can't answer that question because there's premium plus markets, premium markets, secondary markets. And then in India, I would need to know level. There's just a lot of data that I would need to answer that question. So if you want to come back with that, I'll see if I can get to it today. Earlier question was for a GCP cloud consultant. I believe we answered that question, JK, but headcount approvals are fluid. There's a larger headcount approval process, but there's headcount moving around constantly. What happens if I told the team I can move, but things change? Yeah, you got to talk to them about that. Things do change and see what they say. First round for a product analyst, no feedback. Yeah, I would reach out right now. It's neither a good nor a bad sign, but if you haven't heard back, remember to always follow up. I have an interview with the hiring manager today for a finance role in GCP. Prep the most common questions. Anything specific for a finance role in an interview you should expect? Yeah, I would expect a lot of finance-based questions. So anything that goes around like forecasting or numbers or working across other teams to make sure the numbers are right. Those are a few items I would want you to consider. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. Okay. I'm not sure if we were attaching that to another question. If we were, please let me know. Doing a team match, 2 teams, but only one liked you. Did you like that team? Do not, if you like that team and they liked you, move forward. The team match stage is just way too competitive. If you like the team enough, I say move forward. I don't want you to wait for more, but if they haven't decided, then yes, you should take more calls. If you have to wait for team matching with low headcount, is it this year? Yeah, Mike, this is, no, it's probably not a year, but the team match stage is just so funky. Like sometimes it just doesn't happen. Sometimes candidates get into, sometimes candidates get into 10 team match calls. There's just everything is a complete unknown. They do want to hire you if you've gotten to this stage, but you're just going to have to be patient and continue to check in. I really don't like to answer differently L4 through L7. You answer based on your knowledge and skill set. And yeah, of course, the higher the level, the more leadership driven you'll get. But I wouldn't change my answers too much based on level. You have no H1b Visa. Sorry, I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. You have no H1b Visa. How many total offers maybe for foreigners can you apply to Google US office as a TPM? You can apply. The sponsorship thing, it's super tricky. So I don't want to say it's all possible. I don't have a pulse on that. I don't really know, but I know that sponsorship is getting more difficult. You just finished one TM. Thanks for the advice. Pleasant lady, mostly informal conversation, asked loads of questions. Okay, good. That's typically how it should be. It's usually very casual and they ask a ton of questions and hopefully you got a chance to ask your questions too. Earlier question, review stage for hiring committee. Why re-review me when I've gotten good reviews? And to give seems repetitive. Review stage for hiring committee. Well, if you're asking just about hiring committee in general, you can go watch the video we did yesterday, but the goal of hiring committee is to remove bias and make sure that hires are not motivated by a hiring manager who's drowning or team members who just need the help. That's the main goal of hiring committee, and it absolutely makes it a lot tougher to get in the door. And they know that and like that. You do what's best for you. You are absolutely going to burn a bridge. But you got to do what's best for you. And then if you ultimately end up getting through the team bench stage and you get the role and you have to take and do what's best for you, I say always do what's best for you. But yeah, it's tough. You just got to do what's in your best interest. You can't wait forever for any company. Had an AWS manager who left Amazon and joined Google. Recruiters at Google were chasing me till 2 months back, and now the trail has gone cold. The previous manager influenced, and is it legal? Yeah, of course. Can a hiring manager reach out to a recruiter and say, I really like this candidate, I think you should interview them? Of course, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. You want to hire the best people at your organization, so yeah, that's fine. Nope, because I don't know the company and I don't know the level and I don't know the city. Those are 3 data points I need. And I'm sorry I'm getting kind of tougher on the crowd here, but for me to be able to give any comp information, I have to know the specific location, I have to know the company, and I have to know the level. Otherwise, I'm completely unable to answer the question. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and assume this is an L4, so I'm going to say 250K 4-year average. Just trying to start your career and been doing an internship for the past few months, and they want me to continue, but I'm still in college. Interesting. I would say if you're really interested in finishing your degree, finish your degree first, and then say, I'd love to revisit this opportunity in the future. Really keep positive conversations with them. Yeah, I mean, I think that they would understand that, and there's no reason why you wouldn't have another chance, but just have a really open dialogue with them. Okay, search specialist in India with 5 years of marketing experience. Can you tell me again the target level that you're looking for? Because years years of experience isn't equate like 5 years of marketing experience, but you might have 15 years of overall experience. So level is helpful. Which one is easier to get in? Database developer or project manager? 10 years of database. I'm going to say, Mr. Music, database developer is your path. The project program manager roles are pretty tough to get into. And if you have that experience as a database developer, it's probably going to be an easier path. You're told by your recruiter that someone at Google does the negotiating for you on your salary. Um, there is a compensation team that comes up with the numbers, but they're not negotiating on your behalf. You're negotiating on your behalf. Original Google APAC roll through because of visa issue and doesn't have visibility on US roles. Is APAC HC easier? No, it shouldn't be any easier. I don't know if they can transfer you to a US recruiter. I don't know. You're promoted at your current company in the early stages of interviewing with GCP. How can I use my promotion pay raise to negotiate a higher salary? I wouldn't talk about any sort of compensation until you've passed HC. No compensation, no numbers, no data, nothing. So at this point, it's not valuable. Keep showing up for the lives and come back, and we can address it more when it gets closer. The hiring manager from AWS did not like me, is what I meant. Thus, the recruiter. Well, yeah, I don't think you'd want to be in an org with that person anyway, right? So stay away from that person because they're going to be toxic. The people are the biggest challenge in these organizations. So AWS is now, like, this is a broad generalization, but AWS is known for some tough people. So I would stay out of that org who has that person who's trying to block you and try and get in another way. And I'm sorry to hear that. In your current role, you're working as a YouTube content management system dealing with copyright claims. Okay. In your current role, you're working at. The role related to this work exists. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to go back. You need to be networking internally. If you're already there, like use the power of being there. So many people are on the outside trying to get in. If you're not having conversations with leadership in your direct team, collaborative teams, that's the way you're going to need to go about it. That's my recommendation. Still want to get into Google, but competitor offer ends soon. You're not going to tell them that you joined the competitor. Yeah, you're not going to tell them, look, is this like the perfect path? It's not the perfect path, but we don't know if the Google thing's ever going to come to fruition. I can't ultimately decide for you, but I would say take the offer. And then if you ultimately get everything goes through with Google, just going to have to apologize to that employer and tell them that this is your dream opportunity and try and set them up for success if you leave after a couple of weeks or a month or 2 months. It's always a mistake to provide them with anything before passing hiring committee or getting to the stage where they want to make you an offer. You're not totally tied to it. They can't tell you that you can't change your mind, but it makes it harder. Legal operations specialist. Yeah, I just want you to do all the basics right and then think about really the specificity of legal ops. Like, what does that look like? How does it correlate, especially when you get more open-ended questions? Like, how do you navigate that legal ops space, and not just on your own, but who are the critical stakeholders that you talk to and what do you talk to them about? Overall experience is 5 years. I think I want to say like, yeah, it's going to be, I get lots of fun translations from my clients in India with the language and how the currency is referred to. But I think, let me just, I don't want to really do this, but I think it's like it's like 7 million Indian rupee, something like that. And I know that's going to be about where it is for just 5 years of experience, something like that. Sponsorship is getting difficult due to the pandemic. Had a couple of rounds with AWS, and then you got a call from a recruiter, and they didn't go ahead. Okay. Absolutely. Thanks for the wonderful discussion today. Oh my goodness, Holly Lee coming in. If anybody doesn't know Holly Lee, check out her channel. She does amazing content on Amazon and does lives. Holly, it's like a couple times a week. I know there's some like member specific stuff, but Holly is the Amazon guru, so definitely check out her stuff. Okay, last question. The internship is remote, so doing it parallel with a colleague makes sense. The company is cool with it. Does the experience count though? I'm I'm a little lost on this. Oh, you're doing the internship in parallel. Oh, okay. The company's cool with it. Um, yeah, the experience absolutely counts. Yeah, it counts. I just want you to do what's right for you and your education and make sure if that's a critical need for you and just something you want to finish that education. As long as you can make it work, especially if you really like the organization that you're interning for. I want to make sure you're being like really clear with them on like just setting it up and making sure you're having success. Oh, hello, Holly. Okay, Google Recruiter. We're past time, you guys. I have a client coming up here very, very soon. I'm going to try and get through everything that's on the plate because you guys know I'll never, I really don't like ending without answering all the questions. Google Recruiter mentioned that we're at the top of the band for an L3 based off of expectations. Unprofessional Microsoft Recruiter is slow. Okay, just continue to drive up the numbers as much as you can. Yes, we got the famous Holly Lee here. It's amazing. Yes, Holly is awesome. You guys check out her channel. It's Holly Lee. You will not have a challenge finding her. Let's like this video. Oh, if you're still here, we can see we have about 60 people in attendance right now. If you still are here, you haven't liked, you've never subscribed to our channel, and you think what we're doing is valuable, we love and appreciate that. Any tips for virtual backgrounds on the Google Onsite? Don't use them. Your face can get a little funky, especially on Google Meets. Sometimes it's funky. Just get a really clean background, kind of something like what I have right now that's not too distracting. Okay, you guys, this is a great time to end. Thank you so much for being here. 2 hours and 4 minutes. They keep getting longer every time. I try to get to everything. We appreciate you. Thank you so much for showing up. And we'll be back next week at 10 a.m. Pacific.